Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, looking out at the stars through the wide window. The ship moved slowly through space, its thick metal hull catching the light from nearby stars. Other ships passed by them, sleek and shiny, their crews probably laughing at the old human vessel. Jake had been captain of the Defiant for 3 years now. The ship looked nothing like the beautiful vessels that other alien races flew. While their ships were smooth and curved, made of strange materials that glowed with inner light, the Defiant was all sharp angles and heavy steel plates. The aliens called it ugly. Jake called it home. The year was 2387, and humans had been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years. It had not been easy. When Earth first made contact with alien races, everyone thought it would be wonderful. Humans dreamed of learning from advanced civilizations and sharing knowledge across the stars. The reality was much different. The aliens saw humans as useful workers, nothing more. They were happy to let humans mine asteroids and build things with their hands. But when it came to important decisions, humans were ignored. Their ships were too slow, their weapons too simple, their technology too basic. At least, that's what everyone believed. Jake walked to his command chair and sat down. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Lieutenant Ben Foster was checking the weapon systems. Dr. Karen White was reading scientific reports. Commander Amy Davis was monitoring communications from other ships. All of them were good people, the best Earth had to offer. All of them were treated like second-class citizens by the galaxy. "Captain," came a voice from the communication station. "We're getting a message from Admiral Kane." Jake pressed a button on his chair. "Put her through." Admiral Lisa Kane's face appeared on the main screen. She was a tough woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been fighting for human rights in the galaxy for 20 years. Today, she looked worried. "Jake, we need to talk," she said. "How soon can you get to Earth?" "We're 2 days out from Luna Base," Jake replied. "What's the situation?" "The Zephyrian Empire is moving. Our scouts have seen their fleets gathering near the outer systems. They're planning something big." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Zephyrian Empire was one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Their bioships were living creatures, bred for war. They could heal themselves, adapt to weapons, and grow. Stronger during battle. Worse, they were led by Emperor Vextar, a cruel leader who believed in conquering everything he could reach. "Any idea what they're after?" Jake asked. "Intel suggests they're looking at our mining operations. Earth controls some of the richest asteroid fields in this part of the galaxy. If they take those, they'll have the resources to build an even bigger fleet." Dr. White looked up from her station. "Admiral, what does the Council say about this?" Admiral Kane's expression grew dark. "The Council doesn't care. They think the Zephyrians won't dare attack human space because we're under their protection. They're wrong." Jake knew she was right. The Galactic Council liked to talk about peace and cooperation, but when it came to real threats, they were useless. The Council members were more interested in their own comfort than in protecting smaller species like humans. "There's something else," Admiral Kane continued. "Ambassador Stone is calling for an emergency session. He wants to warn the Council about Zephyrian movements. I'm not hopeful, but we have to try." 2 days later, Jake stood in the observation deck of the Council station, watching the emergency meeting through a glass wall. Ambassador Richard Stone, a patient man who had served Earth for 15 years, was speaking to the assembled aliens. His voice carried through the speakers, but Jake could see it was a waste of time. The council chamber was huge, with seats for representatives from dozens of species. The Altarians sat in their crystal chairs, their blue skin shimmering. The Vorthic delegates moved their tentacles in what Jake had learned was their version of boredom. The Kepler Union members whispered among themselves, not even pretending to listen. The Zephyrian Empire has been building up their forces for months, Ambassador Stone was saying. They've already attacked 3 neutral systems. Earth believes they're preparing for a major offensive. One of the Altarian delegates, a tall being with 4 arms, stood up. Ambassador Stone, with respect, what does Earth know about military threats? Your species has been in space for barely a century. We have been dealing with the Zephyrians for thousands of years. That's exactly why you should listen to us, Stone replied. We see things differently. We notice patterns that others might miss. The Altarian laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your ships are made of simple metal and crude weapons. The Zephyrians have biotechnology that can adapt to any threat. If they wanted to conquer human space, your fleet would be destroyed in minutes. Other delegates joined in the laughter. Jake watched his ambassador's face turn red with anger and embarrassment. These aliens had no idea what they were talking about, but they were so sure of themselves. Perhaps, said another delegate, this one from the Vorthok, Earth should consider surrendering before any fighting begins. It would save lives. The laughter grew louder. Jake felt his hands curl into fists. These aliens thought they knew everything about human military capability. They saw the simple design of human ships and assumed humans were weak. They had no idea how wrong they were. Ambassador Stone tried to continue, but it was clear the council had already made up their minds. Humans were not worth protecting, and human warnings were not worth hearing. The meeting ended with no action taken, no preparations made, and no help offered. Later that evening, Jake met with Admiral Kane in her office on Luna Base. The room was simple, with metal walls and basic furniture. On one wall hung a picture of Earth, blue and beautiful, against the black of space. It went as badly as we expected, Kane said, pouring coffee from an old metal pot. The council thinks we're overreacting. Maybe it's time they learned otherwise, Jake said quietly. Admiral Kane looked at him carefully. What do you mean? The Defiant isn't just a heavy cruiser, is it? Neither are the other ships in the fleet. We've been hiding our real capabilities for 50 years. Kane was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to her desk and pressed a button. The room's security systems activated, making sure no one could listen to their conversation. The galaxy thinks our ships are primitive because they look simple. She said, they don't understand that we built them that way on purpose. While they were perfecting energy weapons and adaptive shields, we were perfecting something else entirely. Jake nodded. He had suspected this for years. Human ships were too well built, too carefully designed to be as simple as they appeared. There were rooms on the Defiant that he had never been allowed to enter, systems that showed up on no official blueprints. If the Zephyrians come, Kane continued, they'll expect us to fight like other species. They'll expect energy weapons and shield battles. They'll expect their bioships to adapt and overcome. But that's not how humans fight, Jake said. No, it's not. We fight to win, quickly and completely. We don't believe in long, elegant battles. We believe in ending fights before they really start. Kane walked to the window and looked out at the stars. The council thinks we're weak because our ships are made of metal and our weapons are simple. They don't understand that sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that if the galaxy won't take us seriously, maybe it's time we reminded them why Earth's children learned to throw rocks before they learned to talk. The next morning, Jake received new orders. The USS Defiant was to begin immediate preparations for deep space patrol. But these weren't ordinary patrol orders. Hidden in the official language were code words that Jake had been waiting to hear for 3 years as the Defiant moved away from Luna Base. Jake looked back at Earth one more time. Soon, the galaxy would learn what humans were really capable of. The aliens had laughed at Earth's simple ships and crude weapons. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you underestimate. The prototype they had ignored was about to wake up, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks passed after the council meeting. Jake Morrison was running routine checks on the Defiant systems when the emergency alert sounded. The bridge went red with warning lights as his crew rushed to their stations. "Captain, we're getting reports from the Altarian system," Lieutenant Foster called out. "It's not good." Jake felt his heart sink. The Altarians were the ones who had laughed at Earth's warnings. They were also one of the most powerful species in the Council, with hundreds of ships and advanced technology. If something was happening to them, it was serious. "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main display showed a news report from the Altarian Defense Network. The blue-skinned reporter was trying to stay calm, but Jake could see the fear in her 4 eyes. Behind her, the sky was filled with fire and smoke. "The Zephyrian Empire has launched a massive attack on our home system," the reporter was saying. "Our defense fleet of 200 ships engaged the enemy 4 hours ago. We have lost contact with all vessels." Jake's blood turned cold. 200 ships destroyed in 4 hours. The Altarians had some of the best military technology in the galaxy. Their ships had powerful energy shields and weapons that could tear apart asteroids. If the Zephyrians could destroy them so quickly, what chance did anyone else have? "Captain, Doctor," White said quietly, "we're getting similar reports from other systems. The Kepler Union is calling for help. 3 more species have gone silent." The screen changed to show the Zephyrian fleet. Jake had seen pictures of bioships before, but seeing them in action was different. They looked like giant sea creatures swimming through space, their living hulls pulsing with strange light. Some were as big as cities, their tentacles reaching out to grab enemy ships. Others were smaller and faster, darting between explosions like hungry fish. What made them truly terrifying was how they fought. When energy weapons hit them, they absorbed the power and used it to heal themselves. When ships tried to ram them, they simply opened up and swallowed the attackers whole. They were not just ships. They were living weapons that got stronger with every battle. "Sir," Commander Davis said from her station, "we're getting a priority message from Europa Station." Europa Station was one of Earth's most secret listening posts, hidden in the ice of Jupiter's moon. Only a few people knew it existed, and fewer still knew what it really did. If they were breaking communication silence, something very bad was happening. "Put it through," Jake said. The face of Commander Amy Davis appeared on a smaller screen. She was a young woman with short brown hair and intense green eyes. Jake had worked with her before. She was one of the best intelligence officers in the human fleet. "Captain Morrison, we've intercepted Zephyrian communications. They're planning their next move." "What's the target?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Sol system. They're calling it cleansing the metal builders. The Emperor has ordered his fleet to use human worlds as breeding grounds for new bioships." Jake felt sick. The Zephyrians didn't just conquer planets, they transformed them. They would cover Earth with their living ships, turning the beautiful blue world into a massive organic factory. Every human would be killed or enslaved to feed the growing fleet. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Their main fleet is 3 days away from the outer system. The lead elements will arrive in less than 48 hours. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was scared, but they were ready to fight. These people had served with him for years. They trusted him to keep them alive. Now he had to trust in something he had never seen, the secret weapons that Admiral Kane had hinted at. "Commander Davis, what's the size of their fleet?" "Over 500 bioships, sir. The largest ones are the size of Manhattan." They're also bringing millions of fighter organisms, small creatures, that can fly through space and attack individual ships. Jake did the math in his head. The entire human fleet had maybe 50 ships, and most of them were smaller than the Defiant. Against 500 bioships, they were outnumbered 10 to 1. Against millions of fighters, the odds were even worse. There's something else, Davis continued. We've been listening to their admiral, a creature called Thane Mordek. He's been bragging about how easy this will be. He said that humans are primitive metal workers who forgot how to make real weapons. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. First the council had dismissed human warnings. Now the Zephyrians were calling them primitive. Everyone in the galaxy seemed to think that humans were weak and stupid. Send a message to Admiral Kane, Jake ordered. Tell her we need to talk, right now. An hour later, Jake was in the Admiral's office again. This time, the mood was very different. Kane was moving around the room, checking security systems and activating privacy shields. When she was satisfied that no one could listen, she turned to Jake. It's time, she said simply. Time for what? Time to show the galaxy what we've really been building for the past 50 years. Kane walked to a wall panel and pressed her hand against it. The wall slid open, revealing a hidden room filled with computer screens and technical displays. Jake had never seen anything like it. Welcome to Project Anvil, Kane said. This is what we've been preparing for since the day we joined the council. Jake looked at the screens. They showed technical plans for ships, weapons, and systems he didn't recognize. The designs were clearly human, but they were nothing like the simple technology the galaxy knew about. The Defiant isn't just a heavy cruiser, Kane explained. It's a testbed for every military innovation we've developed since first contact. Every human ship in the fleet has been secretly upgraded with weapons that no alien has ever seen. What kind of weapons? Kane smiled, and for the first time in weeks, she looked confident. While the galaxy was perfecting energy weapons and adaptive shields, we were perfecting something much older and much more effective. We've been building kinetic weapons, guns that fire very heavy objects very, very fast. Jake felt confused. Kinetic weapons? Like bullets? Not bullets. Tungsten rods fired at 15% the speed of light. Guided missiles with nuclear warheads. Railguns that can punch through a planet. We've been working on these systems for decades. But why? Why hide this technology? Kane's expression grew serious. Because we learned something important when we first met the galaxy. Every species out there thinks in terms of energy and adaptation. They build weapons that can be absorbed, shields that can be modified, ships that can evolve during battle. They've forgotten the most basic principle of warfare, which is that the best way to stop an enemy is to put a very large hole in them. You can't adapt to having your ship torn in half. You can't evolve past having your command center turned into vapor. Physics doesn't negotiate. Jake stared at the technical displays. The weapons shown there were incredible. Magnetic acceleration cannons, swarm missile systems, armor-piercing rounds designed to punch through any material. They were simple in concept, but terrifyingly effective in practice. The Zephyrians think their bioships are invincible because they can adapt to energy weapons, Kane continued. They're about to learn that adaptation doesn't work when the attack comes from a tungsten rod moving at 45,000 kilometers per second. When do we reveal these weapons? As soon as their fleet enters the outer system. We're going to let them get close, let them think they have an easy victory. Then we're going to show them what humans do when someone threatens their home. Kane walked to another panel and began typing commands. All around them, displays lit up with status reports from the human fleet. Jake could see that ships were moving into position, crews were preparing for battle, and weapon systems were being activated for the first time in 50 years. Jake, I need you to understand something, Kane said. Once we use these weapons, the galaxy will never look at humans the same way again. We'll go from being ignored to being feared. Are you ready for that? Jake thought about the Zephyrian fleet heading toward Earth. He thought about the aliens who had laughed at human warnings. He thought about his crew, his ship, and his home world. Admiral, I've been ready for this my whole life. The next morning, Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiant as the ship moved toward the outer system. Around him, his crew was preparing for the biggest battle in human history. They didn't know about the secret weapons yet, but they could feel that something was different. "Captain," Lieutenant Foster said, "we're getting readings from the edge of the system. The Zephyrian scouts are arriving." Jake looked at the display. The enemy ships were beautiful in their own terrible way, like sea creatures swimming through the stars. They moved with confidence, certain of their victory. They had no idea what was waiting for them. "All stations, prepare for combat," Jake announced. "Today, we show the galaxy what humans are really capable of." The prototype they had ignored was about to wake up, and the empire that had dismissed Earth as primitive was about to learn a very painful lesson about underestimating humanity. The USS Defiant moved through space like a hunting wolf, its crew ready for battle. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the enemy fleet approach on the main screen. The Zephyrian bioships were massive, their living hulls pulsing with strange colors as they moved toward Earth. "Captain," Lieutenant Foster said, his voice tight with excitement, "Admiral Kane is sending us the activation codes." Jake felt his heart race. For 3 years, he had commanded this ship without knowing its true purpose. Now, finally, he would see what the Defiant really was. "Received and confirmed," Jake said. "All hands, prepare for system activation. This is not a drill." He walked to his command chair and placed his hand on a panel that had never been active before. The panel glowed blue, scanning his palm and confirming his identity. All around the bridge, new displays came to life, showing weapons and systems that had been hidden for decades. "My God," Dr. White whispered, staring at her science station. "Captain, the power readings are incredible. The ship's true energy output is 10 times what we thought." Jake looked at the tactical display and felt his breath catch. The Defiant's hull was changing, opening up like a flower. Panels slid away to reveal massive gun barrels, missile tubes, and weapon systems that looked like nothing he had ever seen. The ship that had looked like a simple metal box was transforming into something that belonged in a nightmare. "Weapons." "Officer report," Jake ordered. Lieutenant Foster's hands flew over his controls, his eyes wide with amazement. "Sir, we have 12 magnetic acceleration cannons coming online. Each one can fire tungsten rods at 15% light speed. We also have 48 guided missile tubes loaded with nuclear warheads. What about the main gun?" "The main gun is—" Foster paused, checking his readings again. "Sir, it's a mass driver cannon. It can fire a 2-ton tungsten slug at 45,000 kilometers per second. The computer says one shot has the impact force of a small asteroid." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. No wonder the galaxy had never seen weapons like these. While alien races had spent centuries perfecting energy weapons, humans had been building the ultimate kinetic weapons, guns that could punch holes through planets. "Captain," Dr. White called out, "I'm reading similar energy signatures from the other human ships. The entire fleet is activating." Jake looked at the tactical display and saw the truth. Every human ship in the fleet was transforming, revealing hidden weapons and systems. The USS Retribution, commanded by Captain Steve Rogers, was bristling with missile launchers. The USS Tracker, Amy Davis's intelligence ship, was deploying sensor arrays that could track a single fighter across an entire star system. "Sir," Foster said, "the Zephyrian fleet is entering weapons range. They're moving in formation, just like the intelligence reports said they would." Jake studied the enemy formation. The bioships were beautiful and terrifying, like living creatures, swimming through space. Their hulls rippled with bioluminescent patterns, and their tentacles reached out to taste the solar winds. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met their match. "They're not taking any defensive actions," Dr. White observed. "They're approaching as if we're not even a threat." "That's because they don't understand what they're looking at," Jake said. "Their intelligence tells them we're primitive. They see metal ships and assume we're weak." The lead bioship, a massive creature the size of a city, sent out a communication. The translator turned the alien sounds into words, but Jake could hear the arrogance in the original voice. "Attention, primitive vessels. I am Admiral Thane Mordak of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species has been selected for assimilation. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. These creatures had destroyed entire civilizations, and now they were threatening Earth. They thought humans would just give up without a fight. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. The communication system activated, connecting the Defiant to the enemy fleet. Jake stood up, making sure his voice would carry the authority of his species. "Admiral Mordak, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered human space with hostile intent. Leave now or face the consequences." The alien's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. "Consequences? From metal workers who forgot how to make real weapons? Your ships are relics, human. My bioships will absorb your pathetic energy weapons and grow stronger." "We don't use energy weapons," Jake said quietly. "What?" "I said we don't use energy weapons. We use something much more effective." There was a pause as the alien tried to understand. Jake could imagine the confusion on the creature's face as it realized that humans might not fight the way other species did. "It doesn't matter," Mordak finally said. "We have 500 ships. You have 50. Mathematics doesn't lie." "You're right," Jake said. "Mathematics doesn't lie. Let me show you some human mathematics." He turned to his weapons officer. "Lieutenant Foster, target the enemy flagship. Full power to the main gun." Foster's hands moved over his controls with practiced skill. "Target locked, sir. Main gun charged and ready." Jake looked at the enemy's ship on the screen. It was huge and beautiful, covered in living armor that pulsed with alien life. In a few seconds, it would be nothing but debris. "Fire," the USS Defiant shuddered as the magnetic acceleration cannon fired. The tungsten slug, weighing 2 tons and moving at 15% of light speed, crossed the distance between the ships in milliseconds. The impact was incredible, a flash of light that outshone nearby stars, followed by an explosion that tore the enemy flagship in half. The bioship, which had been so confident and powerful, simply ceased to exist. Where there had been a living vessel the size of a city, there was now only expanding gas and debris. The tungsten slug had passed completely through the ship, leaving an exit wound the size of a football field. "Direct hit," Foster reported, his voice filled with amazement. "The target is destroyed." Jake looked at the tactical display. The other Zephyrian ships had stopped moving, apparently stunned by what they had just witnessed. Their flagship, which should have been able to adapt to any attack, had been erased in a single shot. "All ships open fire," Jake ordered. "Show them what human engineering can do." The human fleet unleashed hell. Magnetic acceleration cannons fired tungsten rods at relativistic speeds, each impact tearing through bioship hulls like paper. Guided missiles, each one guided by human intelligence systems, hunted down enemy fighters with deadly accuracy. Nuclear warheads exploded against living hulls, creating holes that no amount of biological healing could repair. The USS Retribution fired a spread of 40 missiles at a cluster of enemy ships. The weapons were smart, each one programmed to target a different vital system. The bioships tried to adapt, growing new armor and defensive systems, but it was useless. You can't adapt to having your brain blown out by a nuclear explosion. Captain, Dr. White said, her voice filled with scientific excitement. Their bioships are trying to heal themselves, but our weapons are causing too much damage. They can't repair holes that go completely through their hulls. Jake nodded. This was exactly what Admiral Kane had predicted. The Zephyrians had spent centuries perfecting their ability to adapt energy weapons, but they had never faced kinetic weapons of this magnitude. Their living ships could heal small wounds, but they couldn't regrow entire sections that had been vaporized by tungsten rods. "Sir," Foster called out, "multiple enemy ships are trying to retreat. Should we pursue?" Jake looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet, which had been so confident minutes before, was now in complete chaos. Ships were fleeing in all directions, their crews apparently unable to understand what was happening to them. "Let them run," Jake said, "but make sure they understand the lesson." He opened a communication channel to the retreating fleet. "Admiral Mordock, this is Captain Morrison. Are you still alive?" There was a long pause before the alien responded. When he did, his voice was filled with shock and fear. What are those weapons?" "My ships cannot adapt to them. They're called kinetic weapons," Jake explained. "We fire very heavy objects very fast. Your ships can adapt to energy, but they can't adapt to having holes punched through them. By 2-ton slugs moving at 45,000 kilometers per second. This is impossible. Our bioships are the most advanced weapons in the galaxy." "Not anymore," Jake said. "Now they're just target practice for human gunnery crews." The communication channel went silent. Jake looked at the tactical display and saw the truth of the battle. In less than an hour, the human fleet had destroyed over 200 Zephyrian ships. The survivors were fleeing as fast as their living engines could carry them. "Captain," Dr. White said, "we're getting reports from the other human ships. Total enemy losses are estimated at 60% of their fleet. Our losses are 0. Jake sat down in his command chair and took a deep breath. The battle was over, but he knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy had just learned that humans were not the primitive species they had believed. "Sir," Foster said, "we're getting a message from Admiral Kane. She wants to know if we're ready for Phase 2. Jake looked at the stars outside his window. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was probably just learning about the battle. The species that had laughed at human warnings were about to discover that The battle continued for 6 hours, but it was not really a battle anymore. It was a massacre. The USS Defiant and the human fleet moved through space like wolves hunting sheep, their kinetic weapons turning the mighty Zephyrian bioships into floating debris. Jake Morrison watched from his command chair as another enemy vessel exploded under the impact of a tungsten rod. The bioship, which had been trying to heal itself from previous damage, simply came apart when the 2-ton slug punched through its core. Living tissue and metal fragments scattered across space, glowing briefly in the starlight before going dark. "Captain," Lieutenant Foster reported, "the USS Retribution is engaging a group of enemy fighters. Captain Rogers is using his missile systems to clear the area." Jake looked at the tactical display and saw the USS Retribution in action. The ship was surrounded by thousands of small biofighters, each one the size of a car and moving with the speed of a bullet. In any normal battle, these creatures would have been deadly, swarming over enemy ships like angry bees. But Captain Steve Rogers had prepared for this. The Retribution fired a spread of smart missiles, each one programmed to hunt down a specific target. The missiles were not large, but they were fast and very intelligent. They chased the biofighters through space, tracking them with sensors that could follow a single target across an entire star system. When they caught their prey, the explosions lit up the darkness like fireworks. "Sir," Dr. White called out. "I'm monitoring the enemy communications. They are in complete panic. They keep asking each other what kind of weapons we're using." Jake almost felt sorry for the Zephyrians. They had built their entire military doctrine around the idea that their bioships could adapt to any threat. For thousands of years, they had conquered other species by absorbing their weapons and growing stronger. Now they were facing something they had never encountered, weapons that could not be adapted to or absorbed. "Captain," Foster said, "we're getting a priority signal from Commander Davis on the tracker. She says the enemy admiral is trying to coordinate a retreat." Jake opened a communication channel to the intelligence ship. Amy Davis appeared on his screen, her face lit by the glow of sensor displays. Behind her, the bridge of the USS Tracker was busy with activity as the crew monitored the battle. "Captain Morrison," Davis said, "we've been listening to Zephyrian command frequencies. Admiral Mordock is trying to regroup his remaining ships, but he's having trouble. His captains don't understand what's happening to them." "What are they saying?" "They keep reporting that their bioships are dying faster than they can heal. They're asking for new tactics, new weapons, anything that might work against our kinetic systems. Mordock is telling them to retreat, but some of his captains are refusing to believe that humans could be this dangerous." Jake nodded. Pride was a dangerous thing in battle. The Zephyrians had been so confident in their superiority that they could not accept defeat, even when it was destroying them. "Amy, what's the current enemy strength?" "They started with 500 ships. We've confirmed the destruction of 312. Most of the survivors are damaged and trying to flee. A few are still fighting, but they're not coordinated anymore." Jake felt a grim satisfaction. The Zephyrian Empire had come to Sol System expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had run into the full might of human military engineering. Their bioships, which had seemed so powerful, were no match for weapons designed to punch holes through planets. "Captain," Foster said, "we're getting a direct challenge from one of the remaining enemy ships. It's a big one. Looks like a command vessel." Jake looked at the tactical display. The ship was huge, easily twice the size of the Defiant. Its biohull was covered in thick armor and defensive spines. It was moving toward them with obvious hostile intent. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. The alien face that appeared on the screen was unlike anything Jake had seen before. It was roughly humanoid, but covered in scales that shifted color with its emotions. Its eyes were large and predatory, and its mouth was filled with sharp teeth. "I am Captain Vexron of the bioship Devourer," the creature said. "You have used trickery and unknown weapons to defeat our fleet, but you will not defeat me. I challenge you to single combat, ship to ship." Jake almost laughed. Even now, facing complete defeat, the Zephyrians still did not understand what they were dealing with. They thought this was about honor and single combat. They had no idea that humans fought wars to win, not to prove their courage. "Challenge accepted," Jake said. "But I should warn you, our weapons are not trickery. They're just very effective." "We shall see," Vexron snarled, and the communication cut off. Jake turned to his crew. "All stations, prepare for single combat. Lieutenant Foster, target their command section with the main gun." "Sir," Dr. White said, "the enemy ship is much larger than us. Its bioarmor is thicker than anything we've seen. Are you sure the main gun will be enough?" Jake looked at the technical display showing the magnetic acceleration cannon. The weapon was charged and ready, its tungsten slug loaded and aimed at the enemy ship's heart. "Doctor, that ship may be big, but it's still made of living tissue. Our slug is made of tungsten and moving at 15% of light speed. Physics doesn't care how thick their armor is." The Devourer moved toward them, its biohull rippling with bioluminescent patterns. The ship was beautiful in its own alien way, like a sea creature swimming through space. Its tentacles reached out, testing the vacuum, while its defensive spines glowed with inner fire dot. As the distance closed, Jake could see the enemy ship's weapons charging. Bioplasma cannons emerged from the hull like flowering buds, their organic barrels glowing with deadly energy. The ship's armor was growing thicker, adapting to prepare for the coming battle. "Sir," Foster reported, "enemy weapons are powering up. Bioplasma cannons, organic missile tubes, and some kind of acid sprayer." "Let them come," Jake said. "All power to forward shields. Prepare to fire on my command." The Devourer fired first. Streams of bioplasma shot across space, beautiful and deadly. The energy beams struck the Defiant's shields, causing them to flare with brilliant light. The ship shook under the impact, but the shields held. "Minimal damage," Dr. White reported. "Their plasma weapons are powerful, but our shields can handle them." "Return fire," Jake ordered. "Show them what real firepower looks like." The USS Defiant's magnetic acceleration cannon fired. The tungsten slug, invisible to the naked eye but tracked by the ship's computers, crossed the space between the vessels. In milliseconds, the impact was devastating. The 2-ton projectile, moving at 45,000 kilometers per second, struck the Devourer just below its command section. The bioship's thick armor, which had been growing thicker to adapt to. The threat might as well have been paper. The tungsten slug punched completely through the ship, creating an entry wound the size of a house and an exit wound the size of a city block. The Devourer convulsed like a dying animal. Its biohull tried desperately to heal the massive wound, but the damage was too great. Organic fluids sprayed into space, freezing instantly in the vacuum. The ship's bioluminescent patterns flickered and went dark as its nervous system failed. "Direct hit," Foster reported. "The enemy ship is breaking apart." Jake watched as the mighty bioship died. Its tentacles writhed in space, its armor plates cracked and separated, and its organic weapons went silent. Within minutes, the Devourer was nothing but a collection of floating debris. "That's impossible," came a weak transmission from the wreckage. Captain Vexron's voice was filled with pain and disbelief. "Our bioships are the ultimate weapons. They adapt to any threat." "Your bioships are impressive," Jake replied, "but they can't adapt to having holes punched through them by tungsten slugs. That's not biology. That's physics." The transmission went silent. Jake looked at the tactical display and saw that the battle was essentially over. The few remaining Zephyrian ships were fleeing as fast as their organic engines could carry them. The mighty fleet that had come to conquer Earth was now reduced to a handful of damaged survivors. "Captain," Dr. White said, "we're getting reports from all human ships. The enemy fleet has been completely defeated. Total enemy losses are estimated at 450 ships out of 500. Our losses are still 0. Jake felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. The battle had been necessary to protect Earth, but he took no joy in the destruction of so many lives. The Zephyrians had been cruel conquerors, but they were still living beings. "Sir," Foster said, "Admiral Kane is requesting a full fleet communication. She wants to address all ships. Put her through." Admiral Kane's face appeared on the main screen, and Jake could see similar displays activating on ships throughout the fleet. The Admiral looked tired but proud. Behind her, the lights of Luna Base glowed in the darkness. "Captains and crews of the Terran Defense Force," Kane began, "today you have achieved something that will be remembered for 1,000 years. You have shown the galaxy that humanity is not the weak, primitive species they believed us to be." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "For 50 years, we have been ignored, dismissed, and laughed at by other species. They saw our simple ships and crude weapons and assumed we were harmless. Today, They learned the truth. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was listening. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Jake Morrison stood in the great assembly hall of the Galactic Council Station. The room was filled with representatives from dozens of species, but the atmosphere was very different from his last visit. Where before there had been dismissive laughter and casual arrogance, now there was careful respect and nervous whispers. The humans had a new seat in the assembly hall, positioned in the front row where the major powers sat. Jake wore his dress uniform with the new medals that Earth had created to honor the heroes of the Sol battle. Beside him sat Ambassador Richard Stone, who no longer had to struggle to get the Council's attention. The Council recognizes Admiral Lisa Kane of the Terran Defense Force, announced the Council President, a tall Vorthic whose tentacles moved with formal precision. Admiral Kane walked to the central podium, her footsteps echoing in the silent hall. Every alien eye was focused on her, watching the representative of the species that had changed everything. She carried herself with quiet confidence, knowing that her words would be heard and remembered. Honored delegates, Kane began. 6 months ago, many of you laughed when Ambassador Stone warned about the Zephyrian threat. You dismissed our intelligence, ignored our warnings, and suggested that Earth should surrender without fighting. She paused, letting her words sink in. Jake could see several delegates shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The Altarian representative, whose people had been saved by Earth's intervention, looked particularly embarrassed. Today, the Zephyrian Empire is broken. Their fleet of 500 bioships has been reduced to less than 50 survivors. Their emperor has been captured, their military commanders are dead, and their conquered worlds are being liberated by the species they oppressed. Kane activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red zones which had marked Zephyrian territory were now green again as free worlds reclaimed their independence. This victory was achieved not through superior numbers or advanced energy weapons, but through a simple understanding of physics and engineering. While the galaxy perfected adaptation and energy manipulation, humanity perfected kinetic weapons. We learned to make very large objects move very fast. A murmur went through the assembly. Even now, many species still could not understand how such simple weapons had been so effective. But we did not achieve this victory to conquer or intimidate. Kane continued, we fought to protect our home and our allies. Earth offers its military technology and expertise to any peaceful species that requests it. We believe in cooperation, not conquest. Jake smiled at that. It was true humanity. Had no interest in building an empire. They had learned too much about the cost of such ambitions by watching species like the Zephyrians. The Altarian delegate, the same one who had mocked human military capabilities, stood up. His forearms moved in a gesture of formal apology that Jake had learned to recognize. Admiral Kane, the delegate said, I must formally apologize for my people's behavior during the crisis. We were wrong to dismiss human warnings, and we are grateful that Earth acted despite our rudeness. Apology accepted, Kane replied graciously. The important thing is that we learn from the experience. The galaxy is stronger when all species work together. Other delegates began to speak, each one offering thanks and requesting information about human military technology. Jake listened with growing amazement as species after species asked for help, for training, for access to kinetic weapons. The president called for order. The council recognizes that the balance of power in the galaxy has shifted. We propose to create a new military alliance with Earth as a founding member. This alliance will be dedicated to protecting peaceful species from aggressive empires. Jake felt a surge of pride. 6 months ago, humans had been ignored and dismissed. Now they were being asked to lead a galactic military alliance. It was a huge responsibility, but one that Earth was ready to accept. After the formal session ended, Jake found himself in a smaller meeting room with Admiral Kane and several other human officers. Captain Steve Rogers was there, along with Commander Amy Davis and Dr. Coraine White. These were the people who had made the victory possible. "So," Admiral Kane said, settling into her chair, "how do we handle being the galaxy's new military superpower?" Captain Rogers laughed. "Carefully. Every species out there wants our weapons technology, but they also fear what we might do with it. Can we blame them?" Dr. White asked. "We just destroyed a fleet that had conquered half the galaxy. From their perspective, we might be the next threat they have to worry about." Jake thought about that. It was true that humanity now possessed the most powerful military in known space. The kinetic weapons that had destroyed the Zephyrian fleet could just as easily be used against other species. The galaxy had reason to be nervous. "We need to be very careful about how we use this power," Jake said. "The moment we start acting like conquerors, we become the thing we fought against." Admiral Kane nodded. "That's why we're going to be very selective about sharing our technology. We'll help peaceful species defend themselves, but we won't give galaxy-ending weapons to anyone who might misuse them." Commander Davis looked up from her tablet. "Speaking of the Zephyrian Empire, we've received word that Emperor Vextar wants to speak with you, Admiral." Kane raised an eyebrow. "The Emperor? I thought he was dead." "No, he was captured during the final battle. He's been held on a prison station in neutral space. Apparently, he's been asking to meet with human representatives for weeks." Jake felt curious about this. Emperor Vextar had been the mastermind behind the Zephyrian expansion, a cruel leader who had conquered dozens of worlds. What could he possibly want to say to the people who had destroyed his empire? "Set up the meeting," Kane decided. "I want to hear what he has to say." 3 days later, Jake accompanied Admiral Kane to the prison station. The facility was run by the Neutral Zone Authority, a group dedicated to maintaining peace between hostile species. It was a cold, sterile place, designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. Emperor Vextar was kept in a special cell designed for his biology. The former ruler of the Zephyrian Empire was a massive creature, nearly 3 meters tall, and covered in scales that shifted color with his emotions. His eyes were intelligent and predatory, but Jake could see defeat in them. "Admiral Kane," Vextar said as they entered the visiting room, "I have been waiting to meet the architect of my empire's destruction." Kane sat down across from the alien. "Leader, you wanted to speak with us. What do you have to say?" Vextar's scales shifted to a dark blue color that Jake had learned indicated deep thought. "I have been trying to understand how my forces were defeated so completely. My bioships were the ultimate weapons, designed to adapt to any threat. How did your primitive kinetic weapons succeed where energy weapons failed?" "Because we thought differently than you did," Kane replied. "Your bioships could adapt to energy, but they couldn't adapt to having holes punched through them. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective." The Emperor's scales shifted to red, indicating anger or frustration. "For 1,000 years, my people believed that adaptation was the key to military supremacy. We built living ships that could grow stronger with each battle. We conquered the galaxy with this philosophy. And then you met a species that didn't fight the way you expected," Jake said. Vextar looked at him with those predatory eyes. "Yes, humans think like ... like engineers. You see a problem and you build a simple solution that works. You don't care if it's elegant or sophisticated. You only care if it's effective." Kane leaned forward. "What's your point, Emperor?" "My point is that the galaxy needs this kind of thinking. For too long, we have all been focused on complex solutions to simple problems. We built ships that could adapt to anything, but we forgot that sometimes the best way to stop an enemy is to put a hole in them." Jake felt surprised. He had expected the Emperor to be bitter or vengeful, not philosophical. The Zephyrian Empire is finished, Extar continued. My people will need generations to recover from their defeat. But other threats exist in the galaxy, species in the Outer Rim that are even more dangerous than we were. The galaxy will need human weapons and human thinking to face these threats. Admiral Kane was quiet for a moment. Are you suggesting that we should trust you with our technology? The Emperor's scales shifted to a pale yellow that indicated honesty. No, I am suggesting that you should be very careful about who you do. Trust. Power like yours can save the galaxy or destroy it. The choice is yours. As they left the prison station, Jake thought about the Emperor's words. Humanity had achieved something incredible. They had gone from being ignored to being the galaxy's dominant military power. But with that power came responsibility. Admiral, Jake said as they boarded their shuttle, what if we make the wrong choices? What if we become the next threat the galaxy has to worry about? Kane was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the stars. Then we'll have become the very thing we fought against. That's why we have to be better than the Zephyrians, better than every empire that came before us. How do we do that? By remembering that our weapons exist to protect people, not to conquer them. By helping other species defend themselves instead of making them dependent on us. And by never, ever forgetting